Ty_Leash or Leish. I have heard very explosive athletes sometimes have extremely tight hamstrings. Why do you need what do you need to take caution with when training this type of athlete? This gets brought up a lot because I've had some very explosive, like jacked athletes that have said to me, I'm not going to do any stretching, any mobility, because I don't want to get too flexible because then I'm going to lose my power. And it's one of those things, either end of the extreme is no good. So I get where they're coming from, but most of the athletes that say that could certainly, and I've witnessed it, and Smitty has as well. He's helped me out with a lot of these athletes. They benefited tremendously from increasing their mobility because they were so tight. You know, you have that a length tension relationship with regards to your muscles, and that affects their ability to basically generate, like, produce force. If the amount of force generated depends on the length of the muscle before it's stimulated, you know, or contracted. So if you're kind of too flexible, like a extreme kind of old school yoga instructor where they're like Gumby, your muscles are going to have a weak contraction when you go to produce force. If you're overly kind of contracted and you're bound up real tight, that's going to be weak as well. You need an optimal resting length would produce the greatest force when a muscle contracts. And you could go look up the length tension relationship for like the science behind how that works, but just know too tight, no good. Too loose, too flexible, no good. And usually these really tight, bound up athletes I've spoken about, Keith Williams, Miles Austin, when I was training him for the combine, one of the main ways we were able to improve his 10-yard sprint and his 40-yard dash was opening up his hips so he could achieve a full range of motion and full hip extension when he was sprinting. Keith Williams broke the 10-yard sprint record in this gym the very first day he walked in. Very tight and bound up. So yes, you could make the argument, see, he's a dude that had horrible flexibility, but jumped through the roof and broke your 10-yard sprint record. But guess what? He broke his own record and then broke his own record again after he trained here for a few months and then ultimately a few years, and we improved his hip mobility. So you want that optimal length. So that's like the first part of it. Don't think, oh, I want to be explosive, so I don't stretch. That's bullshit. If you're too tight, it's not good. So you want to be somewhere in between. One thing I just wanted to touch on that you might not think has anything to do, it doesn't have anything to do with mobility, but it's super important, and we cover this in way more in depth at our certification, our CPPS level 1. But one of the bigger factors you need to address if you're training higher level athletes is explosive athletes have higher outputs than your regular person. You know, they're more what's referred to as neurologically efficient. So they could recruit those higher threshold motor units, those fast twitch fibers. They could recruit more of them quicker and more efficiently. So because of that, you know, if you picture an Olympic sprinter running a 100-meter dash, like their outputs are so high, they're going to actually need a little bit more rest and recovery when you train for power. If you're doing something like sprints or med ball throws, you actually got to give that athlete a little bit more rest because their outputs are so high. They might not be physically tired. They're not going to be huffing and puffing after running a 40-yard dash or 100-meter sprint. You know, their legs aren't going to be blown up with lactic acid. They're not going to be quote unquote tired, but their outputs are so high from a neurological standpoint, you need to give their nervous system enough time to recover. And what the exercise phys books say, you know, you need only a 1-to-5 work to rest ratio or 1-to-6 work to rest ratio to recover, and that's enough to recover in between bouts of exercise. That's ludicrous. It's not true because they're not accounting for the central nervous system. So when you see that stud, explosive, high-level athlete, don't think, oh my God, I got to give that guy more and I got to train him harder. If you're training exclusively for speed and power, that athlete actually needs a little more rest and recovery to account for those high outputs and just explosive contractions like with each and every step of a sprint or throw of a med ball. So that's why I think more of them pull hamstrings. They have coaches that think they could do repeated bouts of 100-meter dashes and 40-yard dashes without letting those explosive, efficient muscles recover.
Wow.
Anything else? I'm fired up about that one. Because,
that was a great point. On a side note, I remember coming in and we used to do the CPPS workouts. I would come in and I would drive down to Jersey and wait for Keith and Kareem to come in. And Keith would lie down on the floor in the middle of the rack, and I would just walk on his quads. Yeah, and he would he would just be screaming, yes. But he was the tightest, unbelievable. Tight. But now, I actually learned that technique from Steve Maxwell way back in the day. We did a seminar together, and he had just come back from Russia. And like prior to like the training session, they were all just walking on each other. They would lie face down. And your training partner would just walk on your hamstrings, yep. Walk on your glutes, dig his heel into your glutes, and then you'd spin over, and they would literally like step on your pec insertion, and then you would like move internal, external, and that's if you have a partner, you don't have any tempering tools.
Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. That is we're talking about body tempering, and you might not have, your wife might not be able to pick up a 160-pound piece of steel and roll it on you, or you don't have one. Because I started having my kids. That's how I warm up. My 7-year-old's like just heavy enough where like they're heavy enough where, or Ashley does it herself, like walking on my calves, my hamstrings, my glutes, my low back. It's like human body tempering. It's awesome.
No, I remember, this is funny. Steve was showing like the whole class. It was a seminar we put on and we filmed it back in the day. He was like, Smitty, lay face down, And so I laid down and he just started walking on my back. And then he like literally just stood on my face. He just stood on my face. He was like, okay, we're going to walk down. And he just walked right down. But I remember his foot just plastering my face to the floor.
I'm going to step on your throat. It won't hurt a bit.
But Steve's the man.
Yes.
But that type of tempering, and back then, that's what we did. Like when I went down to your spot, like those guys are so tight.
He's the epitome.
Oh
Keith,
my gosh!
But someone who got more.
Yeah.
And I wish he was here to say it for himself. It's not just us saying it. Like the fastest guy that ever entered my gym got faster, and a big proponent of that was pretty much maintaining his strength. He did get stronger, but it was more about the hip mobility that he gained.
Right.
He's like the perfect example of all these questions. He had the hyperlordosis, like big anterior pelvic tilt. He was the explosive athlete that you did have to be careful with like pulls and tweaks because he was so explosive. But great example of someone, he went from, on the Dave Tate scale of shit to suck, his mobility went from shit to suck, and he got even faster. And then from suck to like good, maybe slightly below good. Still not the most flexible dude in the world, but it 100% helped him. So don't think, just bringing it full circle, don't think I don't do mobility because I want to remain explosive or strong. It's bullshit.
And the other thing too is he not only got faster, but his setting up for his 40 got better. He was able to load in like a spring better. He was able to keep position.
And every lift, if you wanted even upper body, when he benched, he used to have, the shoulders would roll forward, and he'd have some shoulder issues, and then just even increasing his thoracic mobility and pec, upper body stuff, he was able to set up in better positions on all lifting exercises, upper body lifting movements. So his shoulder pain got better, and which translated to faster arm action when he sprinted. It's all connected, and it goes hand in hand. But mobility is so important. Did he need the mobility of a yoga instructor or a professional dancer? No, but a little bit more than he had when he walked in was a huge help.